name?
My name is Shmuel Simcha Lipman. I wasn't born in Krakow. I was born in a small town. It's called Košice. Then I lived in Jalošice, not far from there. My parents' grandfather lived in the other town. I lived there till I was about 8, 9 years old, and then we moved to Krakow.
Can you tell?
Krakow, yes. The Krakow was a much bigger city. When you come from a small town, it impresses you very much. It impresses you because the traffic and the whole thing. In my town, we didn't see trolley cars, we didn't see cars, too many, once in a while. But Krakow was a big metropolitan city, that modern and also historical city.
There were a lot of Jews in Krakow.
Krakow, they figured there was about 60 or 70,000 Jews before the Second World War. But there were always hundreds of thousands people came in from other towns to make business, to buy merchandise, to commons. It's a different, you could buy everything from Krakow.
In Krakow, there was actually about 70,000 Jews here, right? But there was always maybe 100,000 in there, because from all the vicinity, they used to come there to study, to come to learn, and just to come to a city that was full of learning, yeshivas and schools, and it was a Jewish city that hard to describe.
Especially Friday afternoon. Everybody was getting ready to go home, prepare for Shabbos, and they also had sometime announcement, they said, go home, close your business.
Yeah.
Shabbos is arriving. And Friday night, the whole city turned out different. The Jews lived in their section, Kazimir, they call it the Kuzmak. The most Jews lived there. You could see a big difference, the way they were dressing, with the long garbs, they call it kapote, with the streimel.
Your family is part of a specific Hasidic...
My father didn't wear a streimel. He was more modern, he had a small beard. But some people were, they call it a streimel. It's made like a fur cap. And there were also silk garments, special for Shabbos was a different kind of dressing, mostly black silk. The whole outlook was different. You have different Hasidim. You had from Bobova Hasidim, Gera Hasidim, and everybody had his own shtibel, own synagogue to go to pray.
Can you each tell us about specifically your parents?
Well, my family was the ultra-Orthodox. My father wore a shtreimel, and my grandfather wore white socks, and my whole family were very, very Orthodox. I mean, they were Bobova Hasidim and Sakma Hasidim, and they were all related to them. And so we were really, it was, I as a kid was wear rangi payas, you know, curled payas in a satin kashket kask, and Shabbos I wore even as a kid a satin coat. It was really, it was a different life entirely. Krakow was a lot of modernity too, but the majority were very Orthodox. So we had tremendous amount of shuls and shtibler, and it was, when you came Friday night, you walked down the street, you thought it was a different town. And people were going to the shuls with the talaisim on, and when you went back from shul, you hear from the houses, people were singing zmiras. It was, the windows were open because we had no air conditioning then. So the whole town was singing, and it was going on, plenty of rabbis there, and it was unbelievable. It's hard to describe it. It's practically impossible. The only place you can duplicate it, if you go to Williamsburg and Borough Park, you can see a little sample of it, what we had in Krakow.
For example, what did your father do?
My father had 2 stores. He had one in a resort town, and one in Krakow. We had a houseware and gift store. So we had a few people working. My parents did pretty well. My mother worked in the store and everything, and they did pretty well.
When your parents were younger, where were they educated? What kind of
My father comes from a city, Brzeżany, and it is in which now it's Ukraine, near Lvov, Lemberg. And my grandfather was the rabbi there. And my father, when he had smicha, he was very learned, very, very
Which
learned.
yeshivas?
What?
From which yeshivas?
Oh, he had smicha from a few rabbiim from big yeshivas, and he was a big lecturer and very learned man. But he married my mother, and my grandfather, mother's side, had this kind of business. So, he took a 18-year-old boy, married him off. So he gave him an apartment in my grandfather's house. He had a 5-story building. And he gave him, they used to call it kest. I don't know whether you know what it means. For a few years, and he ate. My grandfather had all the second floor and set him up a nice apartment and everything and opened him up a store. And my mother was a kid, but she knew how to run. So he somehow learned a little bit. Never was much of a businessman, but my mother was very good at it. So they ran a pretty good business. And this is how it was. He married off somebody my grandfather was a very learned man, and he wanted a bucher who can good learn and comes from a very Hasidic rabbinic family. So this was the style. You make a shidduch, and my mother was 16, he was 18, and that's it.
Mr. Lipman, can you tell us about your parents?
Yes, my father was born in a town that's called Zaloshice. It's not far from Poland. They know Pinchov and Kielce. Kielce became famous after the Second World War. It was a big pogrom in 1946. Poland was divided in 16 districts. Kielce was one of that, Krakow and the other thing. But my father came from a family, all business people. My grandfather had a big wholesale store in Zaloshice. When he got married, also he fixed him up a business in the Main Street with all kind of products, from salt, pepper, soap, and even perfume. Everything, a general store, they called it, middle of the thing. Then in 1930s, could have been maybe 34 or 35, there was a big crisis in Poland. A lot of business closed up. People couldn't make the payments because a lot of people didn't have enough money. They used to come in and they wrote down in the book how much they owe. And at the end of the month, or they paid whatever. And then there was a time, it was like depression in Poland. It was all over the world, but Poland felt it very well. We moved to Krakow. Krakow was, he had a brother live in Krakow. And so through him, we established in Krakow. We lived also in the Jewish section. It's called Berek Yoselowica. It was a Jewish colonel. He organized a few hundred years ago a special brigade. They were fighting some kind of, I think it was the Austrians. And he was a big hero. He had a Jewish brigade. It's like in Poland. They call it Berek Yoselowica. That time was a big rank. Only Jews were in this thing. And after this, they named this street. In Poland, you had many places. They called it Berek Yoselowica. He was a big man, a big officer in the Polish army. And we lived there. That was not far from the schools, and you had gymnasium, Jewish gymnasium, special uniforms. I went to a shul, to a yeshiva. It's called the Talmud Torah. It was understudy. in the Jewish section also.
Is that where the two of you
That's
met
right.
as young boys?
Yeah,
No,
we
no, we met in camp.
in camp, but we were going to the
Not
same
far.
school, the same Talmud Torah there.
When we prayed in the synagogue, it was on the main street. It was like they call it the White Street. There was the Remu Shul was there, the oldest shul that the king of Poland, Kazimierz, gave it to the Jews when they settled in Krakow. He gave him this. It was a cathedral. You weren't allowed to paint. You weren't allowed to make any restoration. Everything had to stay the way it is. Very old. Up to now, they made a museum out of this synagogue. You had the whole street was full of synagogue. Our synagogue was behind the main street, but you had the Remushul to the right, to the left. You had opposite. You had the
Alte Shul,
this is the oldest shul in Krakow. The king gave it away, and they also had together. You had
There were a few shuls there.
the whole street was full of shuls. They called it in Poland. It's called Szeroka. It was a white. It was a white street.
It
They
is
used
like
to
a
make-
square.
Twice a week they made like a flea market there.
That's right.
People came from all over, and they sold things in the same street. It was very tremendous wide.
This was like a flea market twice a week, and they were selling used stuff. People had used shoes, used clothing, anything was selling. there.
Anything you could display on the street. But you had everything. You had a mikveh there across the street, and above the mikveh, I think they have now a restaurant in Krakow. And in general, you walked out in Krakow on a Friday night or Saturday morning, you felt like Meir Sharim. It's a different kind of, every Hasidic group, the girl, they had a big hat, fur hat, called the Streimler, they called the Spodek. The Bobover,
The
the
Bobo
Sandler,
had
like a different, flat.
13 pieces of fur, but the Gera had on like a high one, one big round one.
called
It
the
was,
Spodek.
yes, Spodek, yeah.
And
There wasn't one main rabbi of Krakow. There was
Krakow had lots of rabbis, but in our time, for the last maybe almost 100 years, had no rabbi. No official Krakow rabbi. Nobody wanted to become a rabbi in Krakow because previously all the rabbis there died at a very young age, about 28, 30, 32. Nobody lived into the 30s. So they decided that they shouldn't have an official rabbi, but they had some great rabbis in the town, and Stieblach, and people came. Every Stiebel you was in the Galicia in Poland, they had a Stiebel there. They were the Radomskie, the Gera, any Stiebel, any rabbi you could think of, they had a Stiebel in Krakow.
Which Rav were you personally close with?
What?
Which rabbi were you personally close with?
My family was all Bobover Hasidim. We were also cousins of the Bobover rabbi. My father was a second cousin to the Bobover rabbi, because my grandmother was a descendant from she was. They called it a Sanzainikal, and this was a big deal over there. Here it doesn't mean anything. But over there it was. And you go to Borough Park, it still is a big deal, you know what I mean. But most of the world doesn't know it. But we davened in Krakow in the Planche Stiebel. It was a Stiebel on the third floor. And the Planche rabbi was a cousin to my mother's father, so we went there. This was from the Sakmer cousins. So but otherwise we used to daven in a Bobove Stiebel, and my brother went to the Bobove Yeshiva there. He was even bar mitzvah in Bobov, my brother, just about.
Did you ever meet the Baba of rabbi?
Oh yeah, every year he used to come to Krynica and. It was a resort town. He used to come, and there was a hotel we used to call Villa Grand, the Hotel Grand. And the whole second floor was the Bobover rabbi. His name was Ben Zion, Halberstadt. And my father and mother had an apartment on the third floor in the same hotel. So when we came back from shul Friday night, my father went home, we made Kiddush, and we benched and finished fast, and we went down to the tish from what they call the tish table. And you see a big hall, huge. There must have been hundreds and hundreds of Hasidim there. And this was going on at Tish Friday night till maybe 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. You have never seen anything like it. It's hard to describe it. Big chazunim, and what they were singing, and it was unbelievable. It is, and maybe it's still available in Borough Park, but not quite like it was.
They all sang together, or the Chazanim sang individually?
The Chazan sang and the Hasidim helped along, and it was unbelievable. It was, and they ate till 4 o'clock in the morning.
The Rebbe was a great musician, am I wrong?
He was very good. He was very, very intelligent, smart man. My father in business never made a move without consulting him, and everything he told him to do, consulted, came out good. He gave a lot of people a lot of good advice. He was fantastic.
Do you still have a connection today with Baba Chassidim?
Not really. I am a little removed, since the war but I am in contact with some of them. Yes, I am. I have even a cousin in London, Hune Halpern. He's a cousin of my father's, and he carries on in London just like the Baba Rebbe's, yeshiva and big, tremendous amount. And I've been in touch with him once in a while. And he published my grandfather's book. I have it here. And so he sent me one. I met him here. He came to this country a few times, so I met him. But I'm far removed from this kind of life already. But I'm still in line,
Mr. Lipman, which shul did your family daven in?
We davened in a shul. It's called Rabun's Besmedrish. It comes from the Gero Hasidim. They had this wasn't a special rabbi over there. It was a general synagogue. It was right above the main shul, the Alte Shul from Krakow. It was right above. He had a nice people came from all walks of life, big business people, and everybody who davened in Rabun's Besmedrish was very famous, It didn't have any special, like I say, it didn't have association with the Bobov or Sanzo or Radomsko. Anybody could not, you didn't belong. Usually everybody down in his own. If somebody was a Gera Choset, he down the Gera Stiebel. But this was a general, anybody could come in this synagogue. We had good chazonim, we had the assistant, the chazan from the Alte Synagogue, David Eisen. He was the assistant, the main chazan in the big shul, in the Alte Shul, they call it, was Goldenberg from Romania. He had a terrific voice. His tenor, when you walked in, no matter where you sat in the synagogue, the acoustic was so good. The walls were made so thick, and the poles, you walked in the synagogue, you can't describe the high ceilings. The acoustic was something out of this world. You didn't have to have loudspeakers. You sat in the back, you had just the chazan like he was sitting right next to you. But we had the experience a few times. We used to give concert, a Hanukkah concert in the synagogue. We used to have the chazan, and then I used to sing in choirs. Since I was a kid, I sang in choir in all kind of synagogue. Wherever they needed before the holidays, we used to make a rehearsal. We started around right after Shabbos Nachamu for the high holidays. Every night, right after school, after yeshiva, I had to go straight for rehearsal. Everything had to work perfect, like a symphony orchestra. And I never forget the guy who was in charge of the choir leader was Manny Burke. That was his name. And his brother too. They were very good directors. Exactly he played the piano, and every note had to be perfect. Anybody who made a wrong note, he said, after we finish, I'll show it. He was just scared he's gonna beat him up. Everything had to work perfect. It's like a symphony orchestra.
And that was through the shul, not through the school?
No, this was from the shul, separate.
shul.
Yeah, we had just before the war. I sang a few years around the corner from our house. It was a Deiches Besmedrish. It was they had an Orthodox, but the women separate upstairs. But the people were more highly, professional, big business people. They used to come from all walks of life, and this was a separate shul. It wasn't like the outside. You couldn't see it's a shul. You had to go inside and come in. It was beautiful, made very well, modern, very modern. And for the holidays, I went to rehearsal till a night before the war broke out. 1939, the war broke out September 1st, 1939. A night before, I was still going for rehearsal, Thursday night. It looked like it's going to start a war any day. I was very angry because I worked hard after school, after yeshiva, I had to go to rehearsal. The whole thing was thrown out. We couldn't even go. I had the bar mitzvah the 6 days of September. September 6th, the Germans marched in that day. I couldn't even go around the corner as a bar mitzvah to go to the synagogue. My father was in the Polish army. He was drafted 2 weeks before the war. I saw him a night before the war. Then they shipped him out not far. He mentioned Bzezhane. Bzezhan, he was stationed over there with the army. They took him Bzezhan, and he got stuck. The Russian occupied half of Poland, up to Tarnopol, Przemyśl. It was the border. Half of Poland the Germans took, and half of Poland the Russians took over. My father was stuck with the other side, of the Russian side. And 1941 was a pogrom, Bzezhan. Bzezhan, his grandfather.
My grandfather was the rabbi there. They had a big army station there. This was
my father was there with the army. And I never saw my father again since 1939 when I met him a night before the war. It was probably, what was it, August probably 31st, and September 1st in the morning, the second war started.
That's when he was drafted.
He was drafted 2 weeks before the war.
Well, Bzezhane, I found out after the war in 1943. They took the whole town, my grandfather with his wife, my grandmother, the whole family, the whole town, my uncles and cousins. They all took him to the outskirts of the city and just mowed them down, all killed them all that time. And that's those big mass graves or whatever. And they liquidated all the Jews in 43. I have my father's one sister, the youngest. She hid by a goy there. She survived. And this is the only one that came out of the Bzezhane. And she just passed away a few years ago here.
Mr. Lipman, before the war, but I guess before your father was married, growing up, which yeshivas did he learn in?
Well, Jalashits didn't have any great yeshivas. You could go to a certain time you start with the cheder, they call it, you start Aleph Beis. Then you graduate, another rabbi teaches you Chumash and Talmud. And later on, they didn't have any big, they call it gymnasium, like a high school here. If anybody wanted to educate himself, he had to go to a different, bigger city and continue. But my father, he learned by himself. He ordered the books. He studied. He spoke Hebrew very well, and because that time came up the Mizrahi organization in Poland, he belonged to the Mizrahi. He wanted to go away to that time to Eretz Yisrael, but so it came out. Before he got married, before he was 1918, when Poland became independent, they drafted everybody from 18 or something, 19 something. There was a draft age. My father wanted to go to that time to Eretz Yisrael. My grandfather said he was the oldest son. He said, the people not developed over there, you don't know the situation. The Jewish situation was very hard. You had to be a pioneer. But in 1941, when we got the news that my father was killed by a pogrom, my grandfather cried. He said, I should have let him go that time when he wanted to go to Israel. That time. It was a movement. A lot of people wanted to run away. Whoever didn't want to go for the draft, he had to run away. I had my grandfather's youngest brother. He ran away to Vienna. He could never come back to Poland because once you run away, it was if anybody gets caught, he gets shot for that.
Well, deserter.
If you don't, you have to draft. If you didn't report for the draft, they used to that was the punishment.
You mentioned the schools, if you could.
You see, you have to understand the situation in Poland. A town like Brzezany had maybe 8,000-10,000 Jews. They had, you learned very much, and some people in those little schools there, and you learned by great rabbis. And smicha you did not get usually from a school. The smicha you were getting is from some great rabbis. In other words, my father got smicha from some very great rabbis. They set you down and they learn, you produce what you, and they keep questioning you and they discuss the Talmud and in and out with all the trimmings in it. And that's when they decide, and they question you on many different gemuras, and that's when they decide and they give you a smicha. They make a smicha, and these rabbis, when they sign, before they sign, it has to be, it's like getting a smicha from the greatest university, like Yeshiva University, everything. But those smichas were very valid because you see here you can graduate from Yeshiva University and know very little, you understand? Where over there, when you got a smicha from certain rabbis, signed by 3-4 great rabbis, that smicha, you were a really knowledgeable rabbi, and your smicha was very valid.
Which rabbanim gave your father smicha?
Great rabbis. He had some of them were relatives, and the relatives wouldn't give you a smicha unless you were really worthy of it. You understand?
What were their names? Do you remember?
They were Halberstams, Halperns, and all these great rabbis those days. They were all my relatives, and so he was a scholar. My father, when he was 15 years old. He was, one relative said that he is worthy of a smicha, but he's too young. So he had to wait till he was about 18 and he got the smicha.
You mentioned the school that you both attended. If you could talk a little bit about your own education in the town.
You see, my brother is very educated. He has a mind like my father, and he is till this day a real Talmudic scholar. I myself was very, not too educated because I was a kid, I was a very sickly kid. So half the time I was not in school. But I still learned enough to, growing up in this atmosphere and this kind of thing. So I am not a Talmudic scholar. I know how to learn a couple of Gemara, I learned that a little bit.
Was it a cheder that you started in?
Yes, we learned when we were 8, 9, 10 years old. We learned Yitten, Kedishin, Bubekame, Bubemetzia. you know, I wasn't a great scholar, not much. Where the war broke out on September 1st and September 2nd. I would turn to 12. I would become 12 years old. But the idea is, I, know how to daven. I know something about the whole thing. But I grew up in this atmosphere. You can't get away from it, you know. It's in you, ingrained in you. But great, Shmulek knows more than I do. A year of difference makes a big difference, and he was a little better student than I was.
Yeah.
You mentioned the gymnasium. That's kind of the high school, or that was the after cheder.
This was the Talmud Torah.
We didn't have a chance to go. I see in Poland, you had to go to public school. In Krakow, in a small town, they couldn't afford to have a separate, program. You went in Krakow. We learned in the same room. Half a day we learned Polish and all the other, like a regular school.
He came in to learn Polish, not Jewish, in the history of Poland and writing. 2 hours a day was Polish. The rest of the day, from early morning, 8 in the morning, to late at night, it was all Yiddish. All our davening and learning and Chumash and Rashi.
It was a very busy schedule.
Very busy schedule.
Were you learning Gemara already, or just Mishnah?
Oh yeah, we learned Gemara too.
At what age did you start? Do you remember?
Probably at 8, 7, 8, we already learned Gemara. Yeah.
We started very early.
Very early.
I never forget the first day when I went in Jalashitz and Cheder. I was 3 years old. The town wasn't so big. Everybody knew you. So there was like a big procession. They picked you up on the shoulder and carried you into the school, 3 years old.
Yeah.
And it was a big, and the rabbi's name was Rab Herschel. And everybody had to go through him, no matter how big he was, how small, everybody had to go through Rab Herschel. And this was the beginning. You come in the first day, was a big blackboard with the Aleph, Beis, Gimel. So he says like this, you learn, this is Aleph, this is a Beis. And then he said, now I'm going to teach you Kometz. Kometz Aleph is O, Bo. So I said, if Kometz Aleph is O, is Kometz guy by his boy, go and give him. He's going to be a genius. He said,
if you know Kometz Aleph, then you are.
The whole town used to celebrate, to give out all kind of goodies and make
candies
and the schnapps and make a big Seudah. The first day was a big procession. It's almost like cutting the hair in Israel on the 30 year.
Yeah, we had the same.
The third year, you cut and make a big procession. You go to Miron and you make a big kumzit over
and
there.
you scare the kid
That's
to
the
death.
way it
The
looked
kid
in
is
that
crying. You got everybody around him,
But
and it's.
The whole town was going with it.
You had siblings?
I had one brother. We were only 2 of us, and we both survived. We were in different camps, but the first camp we were together. But after that, after the war, 3 months after the war, he discovered me in a hospital.
He was older?
3 years older, yes. And he's here. He lives in Boca Raton, and he actually teaches rabbis. He's got a lot of rabbis as teachers, and some of them said, at the pulpit on Shabbos, they said that they learned more from Rabbi Yaakov Halpern than they learned in the yeshiva. He really taught them how to really learn, And my brother learned it from my father, from his grandfather. He was a good student. It makes a big difference, 3 years,
Right.
I was 12, he was already 15, so we were born the same month, 3 years apart.
Right.
So it's a big difference,
Mr. Lipman, you have siblings?
I had a younger brother, 5 years younger. He didn't survive. Because that time, to be very young, very few people, the war broke out. I was 18, he was about that time 7.
Usually that age mostly didn't make it,
Right.
Yeah, I had dozens and dozens of cousins, none of them made it.
What was it like in Krakow between the Jews and the non-Jews before the war?
Well, you see, in my city, we knew anti-Semitism was great, and they hated us passionately. But we lived in a section that 99% of the people were Jewish. So we lived in our own cocoon. We actually, we didn't see anything, you know. We saw only what we wanted to see. But we knew what's around, you know. The police was anti-Semitic, and everybody, they used to come to shop to our neighborhoods. They were haters, you know. But you can't do anything about it. This is how it is. It still is that way, and I guess it will remain forever like this.
You see, Krakow was comparing big city. Everybody knew where he belongs. In other words, you could live out your life within a Jewish section. You worked over there, or you had a business over there, and not to go in the section that the Gentiles. Because once you pass by a certain street, you go to, they call it the Stradom.
Yeah.
After half of Stradom belonged already, it started the Goyish section.
We go into the main square, which was Rinner Guvner, and a Jew with a kid with curled pies.
They would laugh at him.
They not laugh at him. They sometimes beat him up, you know.
They make fun of him.
Make fun.
So
Everybody
stayed in
knew.
their own section.
Everybody knew where
Where it belongs, you know.
You didn't push yourself.
We lived in a house next door to us was a Chevre Tillim.
What's that?
This was a shul, a
They
big
call
shul.
it-
A Chevre Tillim, it was about 4 times the largest this shul. And it was a minyan one after the other. And Shabbos Shabbos noch Mittag when it came, Pirkei Uves. I was a kid, I used to run there. They used to have people lecturing on Pirkei Uves was in Yiddish. I was there right on top of him, eating it up, you know. It was unbelievable. They had some great orators there, you know, in the shul. People come from all over, you know, and this was Chevre Tillim. I was there 5-7 years ago for the first time I went back there. It is a Goyish dance studio. They ripped it all apart. You should have seen what this was. And even the stained glass they moved out, they put in regular windows. And it's nothing.
It's hard to describe the way we lived and the way we associate among ourselves. You see, you didn't mix. You knew where you belonged.
Yeah.
If we go, like, I didn't have too many pies. We used to have pies, I put them underneath the ear like this. It all depends. If a guy had a long pies, he goes to a section upstairs, the kid is going to be either, they're going to start with him and laugh at him or throw stones. So everybody belonged, we lived in the atmosphere of our section of it. The Kuzmark, they call it.
We never went out of the
Kazimierz.
street.
So there wasn't too much interaction between the Jews
No,
and the
no.
non-Jews?
We had
Not too much.
interaction only in the business.
In the business.
They used to come to shop to us because we had usually better prices. We used to buy better, sell better, and you know. So it was. They used to come to buy. They used to advertise. They should go and buy by the goyim, not to buy by the Jews. But they came to the Jews because they shopped by the goyim, and it was more expensive, and it wasn't as reliable. And a Jew gave you good quality and prices and everything. So they, you know, they used to come to us.
They had to come to a Jewish business. Although before the war, they started boycotting the Jewish business. As a matter of fact, they had in Polish, they used to say, buy by your own.
Used to
And
call
then
it
don't
swój do swojego.
Yeah,
It means
everybody should buy by his own.
by his own. We were not them.
They
you
were
know.
trying to make a boycott against it.
But it didn't work.
There's certain things they had to come to Jews. No matter you like it or you don't like it, they couldn't.
Even the priest who was preaching from the pulpit down there not to buy by the Jews, he himself went to buy to the Jews because he had better merchandise and a better price.
You, I guess, based on what you mentioned, your age is, Mr. Halpern, when you were bar mitzvah, the war had already broken out.
A year later, a year after. The
Did
war
you
was.
have a bar mitzvah?
I had a bar mitzvah in my grandfather's house in the living room. Had a Torah, we had a little something to eat, we had 10 people, and that was it. That was, We didn't have any wine. We had some grape juice or something made up or something from sugar, made some alcohol, fermented and baked up something there. And it was a little something,
Thing
just a
is-
soda, that's all.
The life kept going in cities like in Krakow. They made the ghetto in 1941
Okay.
of Krakow. Till the ghetto, more or less, it was hard. Everything was hard. Even a piece of bread, when the Germans came in, right away they started rationing. In other words, you had to stay in line to get a bread very early in the morning. We were lucky. I was the first one when they opened the gate. In Krakow, they closed the gates. It was big iron gates, every house. And if you came back after 9:30 at night, you had to ring a bell, the super to come out, open the gate, or you had a key. He gave you a monthly key, and you had to pay him for the service. So once a month. People that had to come back after 9:30. It was unusual. Most cities in Poland, you didn't close the gates, but in Poland, in the big buildings, the gate was closed. It was an iron gate. You couldn't go in. If you came late, you couldn't make the. During the war, the Germans came in. The first thing they made like a
Curfew.
you couldn't walk out before that. In other words, if they made the curfew 5 o'clock in the morning, you could. If you walk out a minute before and he catches you outside,
They shoot
you
you.
risk with your life. So I was lucky. There was a bakery around the corner. As soon as you're allowed to open the gate, I was right in the line. So you got a bread. Later on, if you stayed in the end of the line, sometimes it came to you, there was no more bread. And later on, they started giving out coupons. Everybody registered. So many how many people you're in the household. Everybody rationed them all. How much your little sugar or egg, everything had to be rationed. You had to go certain stores you belonged to the neighborhood. They clipped the coupons or they punched the card. You took your rations already for the
And the
week.
Jewish rations were smaller than the Goyim. The Goyim, they got bigger rations, and they could buy anyway, because from the farms they used to bring in, and the ghetto you can't get. It was very difficult. But we smuggled in some stuff, you know.
It was a hard life, but it was a day-by-day survival. It was very hard.
The war, your bar mitzvah was before the war broke out?
No, the bar mitzvah was exactly the day when the German came in. And I ordered, I never forget, we ordered a pair of tefillin, one of the biggest sofrim in Poland. It arrived just before the war started, maybe a day before. My father was already drafted, never saw it. I had an uncle in that town, and he ordered it. It took 2 years to order a pair of tefillin.
Wow.
It was something else. The sofa was, you had to stay in line and really order a long time till you get a pair of tefillin. So I couldn't go to synagogue. We made in the building, we made a minyan. We lived in a 5-story building. So we went in one house, we made in this, and my father wasn't around. And that's how we continued the bar mitzvah. We didn't make a parties like we make here, bar mitzvah party. You took a little
Schnapps.
and some cake, and you wish l'chaim, and that's the
That
whole
was
bar
it.
mitzvah. And before the war, the kids used to make give out cigarette. The day of bar mitzvah, you gave a cigarette to people because you were afraid to smoke a cigarette until the thing. But the day of bar mitzvah, you let yourself free. They gave him a cigarette. After he started coughing so much, he couldn't catch his breath. It was that was the celebration. In general, you didn't make bar mitzvah parties like you make it today in America. It wasn't heard of.
Yeah.
The only time when you make a big celebration, you make a tnoim, when you make a shidduch, before the wedding. Like here, they read the ksuba, they used to make them, they call it tnoim,
Right.
avot. But here, make avot, over there was tnoim. It looked like a real wedding, almost like a wedding. You broke a plate,
Well, the Noim used to write in
Yeah.
what you contribute to from
Yeah.
both sides to the.
The whole
to the
ksuba
family.
was made.
Made read
Before.
what the father-in-law is
Yeah.
contributing.
And then you write down the day when the wedding should be.
Yes.
But it was a contract. They said if you break that noyim, it was a little problem. You had to be almost like a get, because it was, you took it seriously. No,
Yeah, it was serious business.
no, I remember that noyim was to be a big celebration.
But my brother was bar mitzvah in Bobov. My father took him to Bobov. And it was, I wasn't there. I was a kid. I remained with my mother. He went with my grandfather. They all went to Bobov. And there, in Bobov, Shabbos, there were thousands of people there. It's unbelievable. And we were cousins, so it was a big deal, you know. It leaves an impression. It's hard to describe it, you know. It is practically impossible to describe a bar mitzvah in Bobov, you know.
Bobov was very far from Krakow? How would they
Not
travel?
that far, no.
They traveled by train or by...
They went by train, yeah. And I was the first time in Bobov about 7 years ago, and I went to Poland. Bobov was 90% Jewish. The whole square was all owned by Jews and everything. There isn't one Jew there. The whole square is nothing. Never was a Jew there. It's unbelievable. I walked around there with my brother and my daughter and my brother with his wife and kids. It isn't, you know, it is the same town and it is totally different. It's like different worlds, like, you know.
I know you were both young before the war, but if you could talk about maybe childhood friends and who your friends were.
My friends were mostly my type of friends, because my parents and grandparents wouldn't permit to have friends that are out of line, you understand. We were all in the same boat, the same Hasidic, and if our kid didn't have payers, he couldn't be my friend, you know. The parents wouldn't permit it, you know. Also, we went in this type of school, you know, the Talmud Torah. Then I went to Soide Torah, which is also very Orthodox. So it is, there was no other way. This was it, you know. So it is, in this country, it's hard to describe it, you know. It's practically impossible unless you go now into certain little towns, you can feel it, you know, like Borough Park, Williamsburg, you go to Monsey, maybe there's a couple in Lakewood, there's a little section in New Jersey now. It's all developed from these. What?
Jealous, it looked like a small town.
Yeah.
I met somebody by us in Queens, in New York. He's a fireman in Muncie. You heard about Muncie?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Muncie, they say 75% of firemen are Jewish. Over there, when they sit down, they have a kosher kitchen, everything. That's how it looked, Jealous, where I grew up till I came to Krakow. The whole town was, let's say, maybe 95 or 96% Jews. The mayor of the town, one time, Ichi Rubin, was a family of ours. Saturday, you couldn't get anything. All the stores were closed. The only thing what the Gentiles did, if they needed a medicine or that they used to drink a certain oil, they used to clean it, called the Ritzen oil, they used to knock at the door. It could be on a Friday night, middle of the night. My grandfather had the business in the front and the apartment in the back. It was his own house. They knew. They knocked it long up until you opened the door. So you need it. Or you needed something if you got a bad headache. They put in like a powder, kogutek, they called it. It was almost like an aspirin. So the drugstore wasn't open. 5 pesos Friday night. So he knocked at the door. He says, I need it. Yeah. He had to get up and give him. You didn't want him angered, you know, the neighbors. They knew you. So we had to accommodate him.
Yeah, this was actually a powdered aspirin.
Yeah, it's like we're talking. Yeah. In Europe, actually, the Jews observe 2 days of Sabbath. Saturday, Sunday, you're not allowed to open the business. This was forbidden. Yes. Poland, America had like a blue law, right. But over there, Sunday, you had to close the business. The only thing is my grandfather had his own house, so you went into the hallway, you opened the door, and if you needed something, you had to watch, a policeman can give you a ticket. But mostly
If they catch you, you bribe them.
you knew
Police
the
knew they were selling
But
it. Back door.
Sunday was unofficial business. You couldn't, years ago it used to be in America too, though, the blue law. Now you're allowed to. But that's the way. Sunday was, the front was closed. Officially, you're not supposed to do business. Very strict, because in Poland, they had to go according to the church. Sunday had to be closed. So the Jews observed actually 2 days, Shabbos and Sunday. And if you have your own house, you could do a little business. Small, not official.
My father opened the store and the back door too, and the police knew they were there. They were all bribed. They got that's how they made extra money. You know, the extra was more than the salary.
You had to live like this.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about how both of you met and where you met?
Well,
We met actually in concentration camp. First we went in Plaszow. When you made the Schindler's List, the story of Plaszow, how they made it. Later they sent us, they grabbed hundreds of guys, middle of work. For me, I worked in the Barackenbau where they fix up the roads, they build the barracks. He worked inside the metal place. They grabbed us. And
it's a work camp?
it was a work, yeah, Plaszow, at that time the Schindler's List was a work camp.
Work camp.
Some of them went outside to work.
Some worked inside.
Yeah, I was inside the camp.
I worked in the Barackenbau for a while. The Barackenbau was a killer. Most people didn't make it out of the Barackenbau. I was lucky that one capo transferred me to the metal factory. And probably if I would have stayed in the Barackenbau for another couple of months, I would have been finished.
It was hard.
Very hard.
Very
What
hard
kind of
condition.
work was it?
Anything.
They were building barracks on top of the hill. And
Building
I was a kid. And,
Outside work.
with
We
a
had-
wheelbarrow carrying the thing there. One actually capo on an assessment tried to kill me. I filled up half the wheelbarrow, so he pulled me out of the thing, and he took out the revolver ready to shoot me. But what happened is the capo over there came running at me with his whip, and he started to hit me and holler him, let him work yet, let him first work a little bit before you kill him. He let fill up, and so he put back the thing and he filled it up. A couple of days later, this capo transferred me to the metal factory. He saw I was not going to make it. So I was lucky. He was in the worst place. But
I worked continuously until they shipped us out to another place.
Yeah.
Pionki, near Radom. This was an ammunition factory, powder for ammunition. And for there, we were there till about, I think, 43, till middle of 44, July.
May or something like this. June.
They sent us to
Auschwitz.
to Birkenau.
To Birkenau.
That's why we got the number. That
we got numbers, very similar numbers, you know,
right
a couple
next
of
to
numbers away. But what happened, you see, he worked very hard there in Pionki. I worked in the, it was a steam factory. We were shoveling coal, putting it in little carts. They used to come in wagons, we used to unload the wagons of the coal, big mountains full of coal, and then they used to put it in little carts and wheel these carts into a building. In the building, they lift these carts and poured it in, and this pipe used to produce steam for the factories. The steam used to, for the factories to run the way, used to make gunpowder and all this stuff. So I was shoveling coal all day long, every day.
I was taken out and the coal was burned already. I took it out of town, and we had to just get rid of it because the camp was, you couldn't leave. Some of them were still hot, and you had to put it in a place that it get cooled off, and otherwise it could catch the powder. It was very dangerous. One time exploded one train, the whole thing, we were in the forest. That's why everything was camouflaged. You shouldn't see from the top. Yeah. Poland had already the factory there. This was done before the war.
This was a munition factory before the war. It was in a forest. And the camp was in the forest too, maybe a couple of kilometers. We used to walk every day to the factories, to the buildings where they
We
made.
were there till July. And as a matter of fact, I have a record. We arrived to Birkenau, Auschwitz, in 1944, July 31st. I have a record when our transport came. From there, they sent us to another place, Sosnovitz.
Ammunition factory.
Then we were there about 6 months, I think from July till January 18. Then they took us on a march. They shipped us out. We walked till Czechoslovakia. And very bad snow and blizzards. We didn't see where we're going. One time, Aron ran away in a building. I didn't see him for 10 minutes. He came back. He tried to save himself inside, maybe to get some food. He came back. We marched.
I came back, they chased me out of the building. The Polacks, if you'd have let me stay there for one day, the Russians would have been in. I almost didn't make it to Mauthausen. It is unbelievable. That Polak, they didn't have to give me anything, just let me stay that whole way. I didn't ask for anything, but they chased me out. And they knew the Russians were just behind us, and they knew it's only a matter of hours a day or something. But this is how they were, these Polacks.
Then we came to the last camp was Mauthausen, Austria. After 2 weeks marching, and they put us on trains, we took us from Czechoslovakia to Mauthausen, Austria. There's a big camp. Thousands of people came every day. Transport, it was the last. And I had frostbitten my toes, we had to amputate them. And it was bad condition, without sanitary, without no hospitals, it was terrible. We lived till the Americans came in May 1st, 1945. That day we liberated. Then we went away to Italy. We were separated a few times, we met again. In 1945, we came, 46, I think.
Yeah.
We met in Torino.
Torino.
Yes, in a place. He was another place. He came to America 6 months before me. He came in January, I came in May, I think.
Yeah.
About 4 or 5 months later. So we were supposed to go to Israel, Palestine that time. But they caught all the ships. It was very bad. Every time they send from the Aliyah Bet or the
They
ship,
caught them, sent them
caught
to Cyprus.
Cyprus. So I had my mother's sister was in America. She sent me papers to come. Aron had papers
From
as
the
a student.
Yeshiva University. My uncle was a rabbi, 2 of them here, a granduncle. So they went to and they gave him papers. I came here as a student. So I went to Yeshiva University for 6 months, but I wasn't up to it. So my brother went, and in 1 year he graduated Yeshiva University. And since his English wasn't quite as good, so he got himself a job in Yeshiva Flatbush. And a year later, he became a principal from a school. He was a principal from a school. That time, Yeshiva, the school and Jamaica Jewish Center, they had about 1,500 students. The neighborhood was all 100% Jewish. Then it was turning black, and the Jews were moving out. So it came down to a few hundred students, so he decided he moved to Israel. So he went to Israel for a number of years. But he came back year after years with his kids. He went there. But the idea is, when I went, I wasn't even allowed to work, you know. So I was after I started working, I was working illegally. But then they came, the Truman allowed a certain DPs to allow us if they register. So I registered on this, and I became, me and my brother and me became citizens on that thing, on the Truman thing. But otherwise, we weren't, you know, they didn't want Polish Jews here. If you are a German Jew or non-Jew, you could get a visa right away. The quota was wide open. But the Polish quota was specially made very, very small because they knew that only the Jews are coming here and they didn't want Jews in America. They loved us all over, including in this country too. So this is an old story, but it's now a little bit better, you know, it's getting better all the time.
Do you have anything else you want to ask?
I wanted to ask
Guys, we are at 60 minutes of the tape,
so it's finished.
so the tape is ending.
Oh, okay. Then.
So should I switch tapes, or what do you want to do?
Right, there was a big,
Right.
big thing.
Like
Do
Like in
Roma.
Aron, yeah.
you remember what it was
Yes.
like?
Thousands of people used to come from all over the country, not thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even more, hundreds. I used to go to the Ramush Sion when I was a kid, every Lag Bomer, from the yeshiva, Bobove Yeshiva at Apushke, Eitz Chaim. The Bobove Stiebel was just a half a block away on the same square. So I was a kid, a little kid, pious with this, and I used to stay there. Yeshiva Eitz Chaim, I practically shoved the pushkin in the face. Every half an hour I filled up the pushkin.
It's amazing. It looked like a
I used to have to run back to the stiebel and empty it out and come back again. And I
It looked
used
like a Miron. Whoever ever been like Bomer Miron, it was a many, not as big as it, but
The-
people came from all
yeah,
over.
the Ramus Scene has an iron gate around him, and people used to write little notes there. Certain petitions they used to. When the day was over, the gate was filled with
Kvittler.
Kvittler. They had to actually there was a big job just to empty out all the Kvittler there.
It was unbelievable how it looked. I was in both. I was in Miron also one time, Nagboyman. I never seen it. Once you go in, you can never get out of the thing. You can't come near a car. You gotta
It's
go.
unforgettable.
But it looked like
It's-
this was people from all over Poland.
Yeah.
The thing is, the Remu, he died, they say he was 33 years old, the Dave Lagboimer. He wrote 33 Svarim. And I just told Aron that the history says that his father-in-law didn't want to Remu. He didn't want him as a son-in-law. He was the richest man in Poland, his father-in-law. Later on, they saw what a genius he was. He was the leader of Krakow. Then it got better. It's a story almost like a Rabbi Kiva. He didn't want it. The father didn't want it. His daughter should make it. That's exactly what happened. He was very, very respected. Up to now, Poland, they went according to the Remu. All the questions, you know, it was something, the shul up to now is still there. Somebody told me that the one time the Germans wanted to destroy his Ohel with the Mitzvah. They picked up the hammer, and as soon as they picked up the hammer, it came such a storm. They all ran away with it, never touched it, didn't have a chance to touch the Mitzvahs. And it's a miracle. A miracle that all the shuls in Krakow, none of them were destroyed.
Rabbi Ezekiel Shul and
The only was
big one there.
the Beis HaChaim, this is the Plashuv, this was the new one of the Yerusalemska. This is the only one that made a camp.
This was a Jewish cemetery. Flashu
was
was
a
a Jewish cemetery. Because we ran out of cemetery.
You
in
had
Krakow.
Meisel's, you had a cemetery, the Remu, in the Remu you got Mitzvahs, but the Remu in the back of the cemetery, 500 years, 300, 400, the Toys of Yom of Lipman, all there. I used to see I used to go around, I think. It was the whole, just the front was the synagogue, the Remu Shield, and then the back was the cemetery.
Yeah.
Very nice. Did you get that?
The sphere, like Boimer, you let yourself a little more. You're allowed to marry like Boimer. So it was a celebration. You see, every Yutzeit from any rabbi in Poland, they used to make a big Suda.
Yeah.
You didn't say Tachna that day. It was a really Yontiv that day. Especially the Remu, they knew that he was the leader, the head of Poland.
Yeah, well, in Poland, in Krakow, for the last 100 years of the history of Krakow, they didn't have a rabbi there. Because every rabbi died at a very young age there. So they were everybody was afraid to become the Krakower rabbi. And so they had no official Krakower rabbi. Every town around there had an official rabbi. And in Poland, when you get a rabbi in a town, it is no contracts. You don't make no contract. Once he becomes a rabbi, he's the rabbi of the town for life. There's no contract. He gets a salary from the Jewish community, and that's it. But like in this country, you get a contract, you fire him, the board of directors come together. There was no such thing in Poland, you know. So in Krakow, if you become a rabbi of Krakow, this was it. We had a lot of rabbis with lots of smichas, very learned men, Rosh Yeshivas that were scholars, but none of them was official rabbi in town. See?
I'm curious. My grandfather once told me we were in shul, and I don't remember what the precise issue was, but there was a question in the halacha, how we paskin. The Mishnah Berurah said one thing, and my grandfather said that in Poland they did like the Ramah.
That's
the
right.
whole didn't matter.
That's
most
right.
people,
That's right.
he was the Poisek Aron.
Yes, right. He was the ultimate authority.
But they
Nobody
always went
disputed
like the
him.
Ramah regardless.
That's right. But he was a great scholar, there's no question about it, you know. Wrote so many books and everything. And
It's amazing his chair is still there.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Everything is there. Nothing was
yeah,
destroyed.
I was there.
Krakow was lucky in these things. None of the synagogues were destroyed. See, Warsaw destroyed a lot of synagogues. And a lot of towns. The first thing they used to come in, to get even with destroying the synagogue. Krakow had, the whole city was treated like a museum.
Yeah.
And they say that 1945, before the Russians came in, I don't remember when the Russians came in, end of 44 or something. They wanted to dynamite the most important places in Krakow. And the Polish underground, they had some kind of girl was working for a company. Officially, it was like a German company, and she knew about it. And there was a guy, the leader. They both didn't know each other. He was Jewish too. She was Jewish. The girls, but they were on papers.
They were non-Jews.
That they're Irish. You know, after the war, they found out. They let know the Polish underground, and they cut the wires. Otherwise, they would have destroyed a lot of things.
Yeah.
He wanted to get even, especially in Krakow.
Can I ask you, you mentioned before that on Erev Shabbos that there would be public announcements that Shabbos was coming.
Yes. Some people used to go
How
around.
did they do that?
Oh, they used to go around.
Used to go around. Shabbos,
Sometimes
the
loudspeakers,
Shabbos from the Alte Shul used to go and holler with a loudspeaker.
Time the Shabbos coming.
Come Shabbos.
They don't want a last minute, you know, it takes time till you close the business.
So they would
They
circulate around the city with
Yeah, there was like a Shabbos.
In my town, there was no such thing as a restaurant has a hechsher for kashrus. Either they knew that Moshe David has a restaurant, he didn't need a hashkuche. They knew it's kosher. They knew a butcher. They knew who's the shoichet, and they knew he's kosher. You know, not to buy from him. He has a treif. You understand? There was no such thing as something should be. It was. Here you have to have a guy a certificate. You have to get a guy sitting around in the place and make sure it's kosher. There was no such thing. You understand? Either you were kosher or not kosher. Now, I was now in Poland, in Krakow. The Krakow has all the restaurants. They used to have everything. They knew this is where to go and this is it. Shabbos, if you come in there to eat, you could eat. And after Shabbos, you come in and you pay for it. You understand what I mean? If somebody didn't pay, so he didn't pay. So next time he came, it almost you didn't pay last week, you know. So, all right. But the whole idea, yes, but the idea now in Krakow, not one kosher restaurant. They have some kosher style restaurants. Mm-hmm. So I was in the Ramu Shul for Shabbos that week I was there. And I even got an aliyah there. and it was very nice. A couple of Jews who were there, local ones, they were all married to Goyim. They don't know nothing. They run the show there. So some of them are grubbying in, they don't know nothing. But you have to listen to their thing. But anyway, so the few tourists who were there, and during the week you had a few people from the Lubavitcher outside with that table where the tourists come in, trying to put you on tefillin, try to, what I mean. In the shul, we had, there was a rabbi, the chief rabbi of Poland, from Warsaw, was that time in there. So we had a little meal right with him there. He brought in from Warsaw some cold cuts and other. We had a shalishudas there. It was very nice, This guy, he was an American Jew who became the chief rabbi of Poland.
Absolutely.
And he's still there. He speaks good Polish, Born in this country. So anyway, so he's a very interesting man and very Orthodox man, very nice. But you can't change Krakow. Krakow is now hardly. They had a Jewish festival there, what they call it Klezmer Festival, that Saturday night. So before Shabbos was over, 2 hours before, the music was going. It was right in the same square. There was maybe 10, 20,000 goyim there. Listening to klezmer music and dancing and drinking beer. We finished, so I went out and took a look around. I saw what it is and went back to the hotel. This is not my cup of tea, you understand, but it attracts a lot of goyim. They all of a sudden they started to like Jewish music, and they put it on television, and it's a big deal, the Jewish festival, they call it, klezmer festival.
Once a year.
My grandmother told me that on Slichas time, in the morning, she could hear them in the street singing for people to get up to go to
Oh yeah, every time the shamus from the Alte Shul was going around and they were singing Teire, Heilige, Kusher, Yiderlech, Steins auf zu Avoidas, Haboire, and zu Slichas. I used to holler very loud with that glock, with that thing.
You heard him on the whole Jewish
He had a little, one of those, what do you call this?
Like a bell.
Like a bell, a big bell. He used to go around.
They used to work like with a lamete, it's called like
and
a
he used to
light
walk
over.
around with a lantern because it was before sun came out. With a lantern, with a bell, and he was howling very loud. He opened the window, and this was the Shabbos from the Alte
It was
Shul.
quiet in the street. There was no traffic, so you could hear him from far away.
But we were up already. My grandfather was up much before, and Slichas in the building was unbelievable.
All the shoes were full.
Yeah.
It's hard to describe the living in Poland. Sometimes you felt like you're in Israel, like you're in your own country. It was Shabbos or any festival, Hanukkah or Purim. Purim, they used to stop the whole traffic on Krakowski Gate.
Main Street in Krakow, even the trolley cars stopped. We had
Everything
parades.
stopped.
Purim was
People used to
unbelievable.
get dressed, all kind of.
You could see thousands of people
Middle of the street, people
carrying
walk.
shlachmunas and all kinds all over,
It's hard to describe. The Jews in Poland felt like they almost, if they didn't have any problem with the Gentiles, they felt like they're their own country.
Yeah.
And they envied. The Gentiles said,
Sure.
they said the country is ours, the houses are yours, the business is yours. They used to envy because
They used to say, the streets are ours, but the buildings are yours. They used to say, the Polacks, to us.
they owned the Jews. A city like Lodz, you heard Lodz? Those two cities, most of the industry was in Jewish hands.
Yeah, there are
Textile,
the
works
textile
24
industry.
hours. 24 hours a day the machines were going.
Jews had the factories right in their homes, so they was working day and night to make a living. Yeah.
It's hard to describe. It's the 10% of the population, but the Jews were seen because they live most in the big cities.
They were hard workers and very productive. They were not drinkers and they were not squanderers. They live a very frugal life. The only thing they were interested is in send their kids to a good yeshiva and learn and be good Jews and follow the tradition, the Torah. And that's all. They were not interested in most of them didn't get wealthy. There were a few wealthy people. They owned some properties. But Jews owned most anything that was in every city, you know. You see, the Goyim used to go into the bar and squander their money on drinks, and Jews never did that.
Jews went home, Friday night, Shabbos, you make a kiddush, you drink a little bit, and then during the week, if somebody used that, you have a little schnapps, a piece of cake, and which it does. Very, very seldom a Jews, you didn't see him drunk.
No.
What was your favorite Yantiv in the home?
Well, the best Yom Tov was Purim.
Yeah,
Of course, Pesach was beautiful too. But
Sukkot was terrific.
Sitting in the sukkah, and you used to take a bottle of beer the second night, Simcha Beit Shava. You dance the whole night in the sukkah.
And the Spiesen used to have in the sukkah, you know. You know what Spiesen is? It's a big deal, you know. You see it. My grandfather made a big deal. My name is Aron, so this is one of these days was a big deal.
That's what kept the Jews alive. They had Saturday, Shabbos, used to recharge for the whole week. This gives them strength. You rested up, you ate better, relaxed. And we go during the week, you had to work hard. Whether somebody's a tailor or a shoemaker, you worked very hard. Come Shabbos, you forget about everything. You enjoy it, give you koach, the strength for the whole week to continue. That's what kept them going.
It's hard to describe. When Shabbos came, you felt it in your bones.
You felt in the street.
In the street.
Who the gefilte fish was the children. People used to take the children to the baker.
Yeah.
You get a number.
You
pick it up in the Saturday.
So the kids used to go to the bakery and pick it up, you know, get a number, you know. And but the whole thing is, you see, the Shabbos was such a thing, and we didn't spend a lot of money. A Jew used to buy himself a pound or 2 pounds of flour and bake his own challahs at home. You understand me? And cook himself. Somebody who couldn't afford expensive fish used to buy the small fish, chop it up, and make gefilte fish out of it. It was just as good and tasty, and it was wonderful. You understand? From the little cheap fish, made a big meal, put a little old challah in there, mix it up, and a little make. It was good, you know. Onions and all these vegetables were very cheap, and you used to live very good.
The whole week you lived for Shabbos.
Yeah.
I had a grandfather. He had a big wholesale store. The Goyim used to bring in a chicken, a goose. Europe used to eat goose in the wintertime. Summertime, you can't eat the goose. You used to put them away. Say Lekuvit Shabbos. Everything you got, Lekuvit. The whole week didn't count anything. Shabbos was the main thing. That's what you were waiting for. The whole week. It's like you say every morning, Shabbos, same thing. The whole week was only a preparation for Shabbos. Shabbos was the main thing.
Oh, yeah.
Friday night, Saturday, even in the afternoon, people used to go to have a lava malka. This was the whole.
Lava malkas used to go on till 4 o'clock in the morning, you know.
It was a shame the Shabbos.
And the Shalashudas didn't finish when there was the end of Shabbos. It kept going further yet, you know.
Never looked at the clock, what time it is.
No. And
it was a different kind of life.
It was these.
That's what kept them the strength to be in Golis for so long. They lived through the old kind of.
Believe it or not, it was a happy life, you know.
We didn't know better, and everybody enjoyed it. That's all.
You see, the Goyim went into the bar and got drunk and laid in the gutter.
They do it. They still do it.
Yes, in Poland, still do it. Yeah, I was now in Poland. Every corner is a bar, and in the middle of the block, they throw in a few for good measure, bars, and that's all they walk around. And there was a guy who passed by in Polish. He chiseled me, wanted a couple of zlotys. So I said, "What do you want?" I told him in Polish, "You're drunk already. You want to drink some more?" He said, "Why don't you go home already?"
Can't. It's with different people, with different upbringing. You can't compare a Jewish home to a Polish home. And the Jews, the Gentile girl used to envy because some of them came in to work.
They used
in
to
the
work.
Jewish home. Used to go home with the atmosphere. She saw a Friday night, people sit together. The whole thing. If they would have been a style, heaven forbid, a lot of them would become Jewish. They would they were afraid of the Catholic Church.
Yeah, we had a shiksa. She was getting paid a maid in our house. She had a bed in the kitchen she was sleeping. She was getting 25 zlotys, and she saw what's going on.
They used to work for
This
these
was
war.
hard to describe it. I mean, they envied us in a way.
No
They saw us sitting down with late lights, candle Friday night, and there was challis and fish and meat and sitting and singing and everything. Those happy people there, and they don't even get drunk, you know.
What would you most want your grandchildren to know?
It's very difficult to convey this to your grandchildren in America. It's impossible to put it. You cannot explain it unless you see it yourself. You understand? So my grandchildren, even though they have a kosher home, but according to my grandfathers and all the Hasidim, they're not even Jewish, you know. You see?
No, it was different.
It's a different world. In my family, to be a Zionist was a terrible thing, because all these Hasidim, the Bobove, they were anti-Zionists. They were not wanted Israel. They wanted to wait till Mashiach will come in order to go back to Israel. You understand? But now they changed their mind. Some of them, there's still some anti-Zionists, you know, in my family, who Sakma and others, you know, they go there, but it isn't. It's not in their heart. They wait for Mashiach. They're ready to. Some of them are ready to give back all of Israel to the Arabs and wait for the Mashiach to come. I mean, this is not my cup of tea, but this is what it is.
Different. You can't, no matter how much you want to bring it back in the mind, you can't describe the way life was.
It's impossible to describe it.
Is there anything else that we didn't ask you about that you wanted to share?
What?
Is there anything else that maybe we didn't cover or didn't ask about that you want us to know? Or?
No, I think we covered most of it.
It was really very, very nice.
Thank you.
So much. It was
Thank
really
you.
beautiful.
Let the new generation, whoever is interested, let them go in and see what a life, how things were destroyed. You can't describe. You go cities, towns, like you said, some of them non-Jews at all. A town like Jaloshitsa, they were 95% Jews. Nothing
There's
left.
3.5 million Jews. There was 10% of the population in Poland was Jewish, and these 10% were really 90% of them were totally very Jewish. You understand?
Right.
And it was in a different world. Mostly were in the Hasidic world.
Yes.
It is hard to describe that there is none of them there anymore. This.
Thank you very much. It was really very, very interesting.
They go back once in a while. There's a town, Lezhensk, Abelemelech ben Lezhensk. I'm a descendant of Lipman. This is the second. I have even a picture from the cave. It's written. So people used to go away, even now from New York, they got from Borough Park, they take, once a year they go away, hundreds of people. They go to Oman or Rabbi also,
Right,
Ukraine.
right.
How are you related to Mele Melech?
Abel-Melech, they say we are descendant, great-grandfather. He had another brother, Rabzisha.
Yeah.
Rabbi Tversky from Milwaukee, he was here last year. Tomorrow his son is coming. So one time we start talking. He says, I'm also related. He
Actually,
says,
the Lipmans.
he comes from the Zisha, the brother. And we come from the Rabbi Melech.
You see, the Lipmans, the Halperns, the Halberstams, they're all relatives, you understand? So,
Weisenberg's sons. And
yeah, they're all it's just, you know. So the idea is when Rabbi Tversky came from Milwaukee, he took a look at this parochas. He happens to be a son's Einikel too. I told him who I am. He knows exactly. He's a cousin. You understand? He's a son's Einikel too. So the idea is this is all these rabbis were mostly very much related. I know my father used to say we had some Lipmans in the family, the Rabbi Elimelech or whatever. But I was a kid, what did I know? But the idea is These are all interrelated. In Poland, you married into usually yichus was very important.
Everybody looked for yichus.
Everybody looked for yichus. They wanted to have some scholars in their family. And they were usually one rabbi intermarried in the other. So most of these rabbis are very much related, you understand? The sons, the
No, they wanted to
yeah.
intermarry each other, that's
Yeah.
all.